Hello and welcome to Horror 101. I'm Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and this time we're discussing The Grudge. So I just want to be very clear. This is the American remake. It's not Ju-on The Grudge that came out 2 years prior in 2002. This is the 2004 American version, which still has the same director as the original Japanese film, which is interesting. Although it's written by an American writer,
Yeah.
which makes sense. I mean, I think that's kind of like the best case scenario for something like this, where you still get that like original vision, but you put it through like a North American lens a bit too.
Yeah, a bit with that. And another particular thing, hearing that little bit of news was one of the pervasing additional bits of horror is a stranger in a strange land with Americans facing off with what Japan has to offer.
Yes. So this film, I'm assuming you recognized at least a few people in the cast.
Ideas.
Who all did you recognize? I know one for sure you'll know, but I'm wondering if you
Well,
recognize any of the
it would
others.
probably be tremendously insulting if I didn't remember her with how much of the stuff I've already seen with her, the stuff I still heard of that she's still doing. Um, Hopefully, handing the name right with that is Sarah Michelle Gardner.
Geller.
Geller, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the one I figured you'd get. There's a few others that I was like, maybe. So it also stars Clea Duvall, who I would be kind of surprised if you remembered because she's not like super well known. She did do an episode of Buffy. If you remember back to season one, there was an episode called Out of Sight, Out of Mind, where there's the one girl who gets ignored by everyone, so she becomes invisible.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, that was Clea Duvall. And it also has Bill Pullman, and a few other people in it. Sam Raimi's brother Ted Raimi has a small role in it as well.
Ah,
He plays the guy who gives Karen the file to go see the lady in the home.
yes, the one
He's like the
her
director for
boss
the
and
thing or whatever. Yeah,
job.
that's him.
Mhm. Okay, but yeah, no, I recognized a couple particular people.
Yes. So, what did you think of the movie, Dave? And then we'll get into what I thought of it because I've seen this a few times previously.
Okay. Well, with you knowing my uh, amount of knowledge with horror and whatnot, I've had a little bit of exposure to Japanese style horror through certain anime and other sorts of stuff that I've watched in the past. So it wasn't too much new for looking into this particular story. Of course, one of the big difference that is kind of my go-to to it with any sort of horror story is like that is I usually either think or have thoughts of a way of to either combat or escape from this particular sort of case, but this is not one of those movies. It really errs on the side of there is not any easy way to deal with this thing once you wake it up.
Yeah.
And that just adds a decent amount of the horror.
Yeah. No, I think the concept is really strong. I like the like. I don't know if this is like an actual like Japanese mythology or cultural thing where it's like, oh, when somebody dies in an extreme rage or sorrow, that creates like this like spirit in that place.
Hmm.
I don't
And
know if that.
again,
Go ahead.
it's a typical sort of thing. Again, my apologies for the pronunciation, but it's specifically known as an onyo, a spirit of extreme vengeance in that sort of case. And it wasn't really mentioned anything that I can specifically find or whatnot, but it was also interesting that not only was the main ghost an issue with it, but there was also the case of spoilers a bit to the movie. Wife with her whole family. The husband finds out she's having an affair or different thoughts, goes into a rage and kills her and her son. But along with that, he kills a cat. And the last thing you want to do is to kill a cat near any sort of dead things because that creates another particular thing known as a nekomata. And that's just as bad.
So one of the okay, I'm gonna say as somebody who's seen a lot of horror movies, and I hadn't seen this movie in about 10 years or so, I didn't find this terribly scary. Like, there's a couple of like
Yeah,
there's
I'd have to agree with you. Agree with you there. It's not so much of the immediate spooks. Maybe not even up to the case of the pit, uh, pit in your gut chills sort of feeling, but again, at the time, that would most assuredly be kind of the case with it, if it was your first exposure to it.
yeah, totally. There's some good like creepy like imagery and stuff in it, and like it's a cool concept. I'm like I just kind of want this movie to be scary at some point.
Yeah. Well, again, it's always a preference for any particular person with their style of horror.
Yeah, no, totally. And it is also one of those things where like I mean it is like a PG-13 horror movie in 2004, so you know.
Yeah, I'm trying to get as much kind of exposure for that sort of thing from there, especially with how big the Ring was when it first came out. It was kind of its case of, oh, that sort of film got big exposure, and with this coming to there, remaking a movie for an American audience would make gangbusters, supposedly. Though, double checking, I'm not exactly sure. Oh no, did fairly good with 8 million or 10 million budget, and then getting a near almost 200 million budget back.
Yeah, no, the movie did really well at the box office. I mean, it's it like you said, like The Ring had come out 2 years prior. That kind of showed that like making these like remaking these Japanese horror films for an American audience can be very profitable. I'm going to argue that The Ring's a better movie from memory. And this does have the benefit of having some named people in it because you've got Sarah Michelle Gellar who's just coming off of Buffy at this point. It's produced by Sam Raimi. Like there's some legitimate people that like would have cultural sway at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that would definitely also help the box office. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I was like, well, I mean, I think this is one of those examples of like this is a really good like early horror movie for someone who's maybe not super into the genre. This is maybe kind of like an easy way to kind of get into the more scary stuff later on.
No, that's definitely true. And I think it's just a case of how much of the suspense or exposure to it there is. Because definitely within the case of the movie, there's, I'd say, a decent enough sort of exposure of the creature and whatnot, which in some cases kind of helps or hurts, kind of depending. But it's not until the very end you kind of get to the real climax of it, which even then it's probably not as much in comparison to either typical horror movies today or some of the bigger names that were kind of out and around the time. So yeah, I'd probably agree. It'd be one of the ones you could easily show someone, though it mostly just kind of depends on their tolerance for that type of horror exposure.
Yeah, no, totally. It also makes me want to see the original Japanese version now because I've never seen that,
Hmm.
and I kind of
Eh,
kind of
it's a
want to.
thought. It's a thought in my case, not so much to dive into it that much. Mostly just the case of I've had little bits of exposures of how crazy some of the Japanese stuff could go. And it's like, I'd like to maybe keep my sanity for a little while longer, maybe.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, so I enjoyed this. I thought it was a pretty good time. Like I
Mm,
said, I wish it was scarier, but can't always get what you want. Uh,
yeah.
so
Again, different strokes for different folks in most cases.
yeah, totally, totally. So for next time, we're gonna switch it up a little, Dave. We're gonna go a little further back in time.
Okay, because again, I'm trying to remember the particular ones you mentioned. There's one I have fresh in my mind, But from the sounds of it, that's probably not going to be until next week. So I'm trying to remember which other one you had on lined up.
We're gonna stick with the supernatural, kind of like the ghost kind of horror. We're going back to 1982 with Poltergeist.
Ah, yes, another one of the big classics.
You've never seen Poltergeist, have you?
Again, sadly, no. It's another one of the ones of I know of it, and I know of the slash scenes and jokes that people make about the movie, but I most likely haven't seen the whole movie in full that I can remember.
Okay, you're in for a treat. So, a little bit about the film. I don't know if you know, but it's directed by Toby Hooper, who's a name you probably don't know.
No, not ringing a bell.
He's probably most well known for directing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Supposed yay? I'm not exactly sure if it was the supposed good one or like the remake
No,
one
no,
they
the
did.
original one in the 70s.
Ah,
It's also written or co-written and produced by Steven Spielberg.
yeah, that kind of sticks a big gold star on it, I suppose.
Yes. So, I believe it's also one of the movies that's responsible for the PG-13 rating, if I'm not mistaken. I really
Yeah,
like
I
this
wouldn't be
movie.
too surprised with the supposed stuff that happens, and I believe little children's.
It's I really like this movie, Dave. I think you're gonna really like it too. It's creepy, but it's also fun.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those interesting balances that you can definitely have it one or two ways, but it's kind of keeping the spookiness of it that if you're not careful, it can easily slip out of your fingers.
Yeah, I think this is one of those ones where they really nail that kind of like managing to keep it scary but still fun. Like I feel like this to me is one of those like maybe not for a little kid, but like I feel like this is a movie that you would show like a 12 or 13-year-old who's interested in horror. Where it's like it's scary, like it'll still be scary to them, but it'll be like accessibly scary.
Kind of the case of after the movie's over, you look over and they're still kind of a little bit shook, and you kind of ask them, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Did we watch it again?"
Yeah, I think it's got those kind of vibes to it. It's Spielberg and Toby Hooper really nail this, I think. So yeah, that'll be
Hmm.
fun for next week, or for next time, I
Yeah,
should say.
sounds interesting.
Alrighty, so until then, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.